And you're live!
Live and direct from PBTV, it's Proper Sports. We've got a real treat for you all today. On the away team, we've got none other than Rasheed Peters. My sources tell me he's never played a game of squash in his life. How will he fare against the force that is Jonathan, not bronze, not silver, but Jonathan Goldman? With all this experience between them, there's only one way this game can go. But let's hit the courts, let's settle into our seats, and let's Bantah.
And you're live!
Imagine that I am an investor and we're in the same elevator together, and you come in, I'm like, oh, hi Jonathan, like I know the work you do, but give me an elevator pitch. 30 seconds, 1, 2, 3, go.
All right, so the Right to Immigration Institute, it's a nonprofit that trains undergraduates in immigration law so they can represent people going through the immigration process. And we're the only organization in the entire country doing that. And the reason why is because there's a huge lack of access to representation, and you're 5 times as likely to get an immigration benefit if you have that sort of representation. So that's the gap that we're trying to make sure that we can shrink and actually give people the opportunity to get access to being in a country and being able to escape persecution they may be facing.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're doing an organization as college students who actually does that and is like organized in that way. But I think I heard that you can actually go to court, right? And like represent like someone like in a case for immigration without actually having a law degree.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, so this is the only way you can have actual in-court legal experience as an undergraduate student. And like I said, and since we're the only organization in the whole country doing it too, it's also this unique opportunity we have here at Brandeis University. So right now we have 2 students who are accredited, which is basically the same thing as a certification through the Department of Justice so they can represent people. And we have a few more students who, as applications are pending right now, I'm waiting to hear back from them. And hopefully we'll have a few more students who can do that work as well.
Yeah, awesome. But like just backtracking a bit, like how did TRII like get started? Like what was like, you know, the moment you're like, oh, I should actually do this? Like what's the backstory?
Yeah, so I mean the backstory, I kind of was actually roped into it. It wasn't really my founding at first. There's 2 students, Muna Safaju and Victoria St. Jean, and they had taken a class, Immigration and Human Rights, with Professor Doug Smith here at Brandeis. And when they took that class, one of the things that Professor Smith talks about is how there's this process to get certified and be able to represent people.
Right.
And he also talks about the conditions that a lot of people face in immigration court, that kids don't get representation. Often the interpretation services that are provided are not up to the quality that's necessary to actually give someone a fair chance in court. And over the summer after they took that class, they reached out to him. They're like, what would this look like on the undergraduate level? What would this look like at Brandeis?
I know like the road wasn't like easy to like form a TRII into the nonprofit that it is today. So like what was that process like building it like from the ground up basically?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, right? Because I mean 3 students and a professor, those are the co-founders that we have. We have, you know, some personal experiences to understand immigration for Munis and then for myself. And, you know, Doug has worked in clinics many times before, and he has some, but it was like the actual starting of a nonprofit was something that was entirely foreign to us. So the whole process, I mean, it kind of started with just Googling things. It was just like, how do you put together a nonprofit? What does it mean to file a 501c3, what does it mean to do those sorts of things? So in the beginning, it was a lot of discussion and a lot of Googling because we didn't really necessarily know where we were going, but there were some things that we felt very strongly about. We knew we wanted asylum to be sort of one of our main priorities, particularly because those cases are most often underrepresented, because it's an opportunity for students to be a part of the research that goes into those sorts of cases. And also, it was just something that we've seen so many injustices in. So we knew asylum was a big part. And we knew we also wanted to be independent of Brandeis. We knew we wanted to be at a nonprofit because one, it would give us autonomy, but also if we could grow this into something that wasn't just at Brandeis, which is sort of was a larger part of our goals there, we knew we had to be something independent that could grow like that. So that was sort of, those were like the two things we started from, and it was like that we had the foundation, and then it was like, let's go from there.
Yeah. So would you say that you guys have had a breakthrough case yet? Like one case that you did and you're like, wow, we're really like making impact. Like what we envisioned is actually like working and like doing something good for someone else.
Yeah. Well, I remember, so the first decision that we got was in August or September, and it was a citizenship application. And I remember when we got that decision, it kind of took like the whole day for it to sink in. We were like, okay, like we got to move on to the next. It was like we kind of got the decision, and it wasn't like, wait, this worked. Like we just something happened. We sent it in, and it was a case that I had sent in. So it was like, it wasn't as though it was, we had helped out and one of our attorneys sent it. It was like, that was actually something that happened. I think that was the moment we were like, it isn't like a fluke what we're doing. Like this is actually possible and we can continue doing this. We haven't heard back on any of the asylum applications yet, largely because they just take a really long time. But we have had a few that have had their hearing and have gone to court and they've had that aspect of it, but we haven't had the final decision.
Okay, so I think the people who know you or know of you know that you're always busy. You're always on the run, going somewhere, like doing some things. Like you always have like a mandate to like go and get something done. But I know TRII's not the only thing that you do. On top of school, you double major and triple minor.
Yeah.
All right, so you do a lot. But what else do you do like outside of school and TRII as well?
Yes. So I often joke that I have like my sort of like different worlds that I kind of live in. So I have my immigration world over here, and then my academic world, and then I sort of my political world is the other one. So I'm really been quite involved politically here in Massachusetts. I've worked on statewide campaigns, local campaigns. I'm on the Democratic State Committee, which the easiest way to explain it is like the DNC for Massachusetts, the group that sort of sets the Massachusetts Democratic Party's platform and works on making sure candidates get elected and things like that within Massachusetts. I've been really involved with that front, but particularly more so my inspiration and what I've been trying to put more of a focus on is using that platform as a way to get other young people the ability to get involved with politics, whether that's finding out ways that as a Democratic Party we can provide more scholarship opportunities, other things like that to allow young people to be involved in politics, or it's just getting the word out or putting more young people in leadership positions so people feel comfortable in those spaces, things like that. So that's my political world. I play squash. That's my way of like, even I could have like a paper due the next day, but I just need something to just close off my mind from everything going around. Yeah, just like get in a squash court, not think about anything else, just hit around. It's like the perfect way. Just like, it's just like you have to focus so much that you can't think about those other things.
On your live.
Yeah, no, and it's energizing. You have to focus, so you clear your mind and everything. It's great. I love it.
So you did it like all throughout high school, or?
No, I didn't actually play in high school at all. It was really sad. Our high school didn't have any courts, and you don't have a court, you can't really play.
Right.
But when I came back to Brandeis, I was like, I loved playing that so much in middle school, and I took it up again, and I've been doing it 4 years I've been here.
Nice. Cool.
All right, let's play.
Let's do it. Let's play. Hit it with force, right?
Yeah, sure. You got there. It's just hit the ball.
Got it.
It's like a big U you're making. Like this.
And moral support. have any favorite comedians?
I'm not sure. I really appreciate comedians who can be funny without necessarily making fun of someone. So like self-deprecating humor, like I'm like all in for that. Like everyone can relate to that, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're making fun of life.
Down.
Exactly. I mean, it's just I think the purest form of like intelligent comedy is if you can make a joke that everyone will laugh at.
Yeah. If you weren't, interested in immigration and like politics to some extent, like if you didn't see yourself like in that field in the future, what else do you think you would do?
Cooking without a doubt. I mean, I don't even have to think about it for a second. No, if I could do anything, without a doubt, would be cooking. I mean, I love cooking so much. This morning I woke up and I spent the first 2 hours me waking up just reading through cookbooks.
That's nice. I also love cooking. That's funny. But I think if I was supposed to choose like a career that's like something like I would do, like say for example, like I started college all over again, I would become a dentist. Yeah, it's just like a profession I find really cool. Yeah. Just the fact that you go to the dentist and they try to have like a full-blown conversation with you while there's like 10 things in your mouth.
Your mouth is always going to be bleeding when you get out of there.
Yeah. In the 10th grade, I remember I was in class one day and one of my tooth just like, I kept feeling things in my mouth. Yeah. And then when I like spat it out, it was just like pieces of my tooth. Like one of my tooth was just like falling out like piece by piece. And then once that happened, all my other teeth just like went bad. So like in the last like 4 or 5 years, I've just been like in and out of the dentist like every year. Pretty much. I just got like a root canal done, but like I don't know, it was kind of cool too because like the dentist that I had, like whatever he would do, he would like explain the science behind it. So it was like fun, like actually going and like learning about the stuff. But then he would actually do it, and I'd be like, no, I'm dying. Like stop. But yeah.
I actually had a similar experience to that. So in 8th grade, I was playing basketball with this kid who's like 6'7", twice my size, twice my build, everything, and I was convinced I was like, I can lay up on him. And I went up and I just went straight into his elbow as I went up to shoot the basketball. So I ended up having 7 teeth either chipped or just like knocked out. I've had to get them fixed so many times. I mean, it's just ridiculous when they're chipped in all different ways, and my mouth is messed up. So, I mean, that experience of just being there for like so long, of like, all right, we gotta go back,
again.
And they get to know you too, where they're like, oh, you're that person, right?
And we're back. This game has been nothing short of amazing. Jonathan has really showed up and showed out. Just look at that technique. This is the skill of someone who's been playing since they were a child. Cool, calm, collected, and confident. It's easy to see why he won this match, but Rasheed, on the other hand, did not come through. Let's look at the highlights.
You're super involved right now. You do a lot. We've established that. But this wasn't always your thing. You weren't always this involved. So it was like a gradual process of like finding inspiration and like getting involved in like different things. But what was that like process like for you?
Yeah, no, there's a particular story, and my brother loves when I tell this because it centers around him, and he gets to feel like, it was all me. But
credit.
So prior to my sophomore year in high school, I wasn't really involved in anything, not like for any reason. I just like didn't necessarily care about being particularly involved. I like maybe was in 1 or 2 sports, but that was really my only extracurricular thing. I did like fine in school. I wasn't really focused very academically either. And then one time over spring break my sophomore year, I was watching like Netflix shows. I was like on the couch, like some weird position, like watching Netflix. And my brother walks in like a very non-confrontational way, which I feel like is hard to imagine because I feel like a lot of times there's like, brother tension. But
like,
yeah, exactly. But he comes in, very like nonchalantly just sort of says, one thing I really wish is that in high school, I'd been more involved in activities or just taking more advantage of opportunities. Because once you get to college, it's a lot harder to start those things, and life just moves a lot faster. Everything's crazier. My brother's older than me. He was in like his junior year of college at that point. And they just like walked out. There's no further conversation. It was just like, here's this heavy thing, and I'm just gonna walk out. And for whatever reason, it just sparked something in me. And the next day, we were driving somewhere, and I was just like, hey, my mom was driving. I was like, hey, Mom, like, you know what's weird is I feel like our high school, we always say that we're like this amazing high school. We don't even have anything like a debate team. And she was like, oh, like, why don't you just like go start it or something? And I was like, okay, like I'll go figure this out. And that was sort of the jumping off point to which I got involved with more of these things. It was like that point of my brother sort of planting that seed. But I think another point of it was like, I had, for example, a parent who was like, yeah, like, just do it. Like being like, yeah, that's something that you can do. And I think having a family who was like, yeah, that's something that you can do. My dad, for example, he had been an editor-in-chief at his high school newspaper, which came later after the debate team. Having things like that around me, I think also shifted my sort of worldview of like, this is something that I can be a part of, that is something that I can do. And I think also that played into my initiative of getting involved with those things.
So you started like both the debate and newspaper like after a conversation with your brother watching Netflix. But just thinking like to your involvement like after that point as well, you were involved with the Northampton, is it the Youth Mayors Committee?
The Mayor's Youth Commission in Northampton.
Yep. So like what sparked like your interest in that like commission and like the work? I know you did some things with like plastic bag initiative and something with like street benches as well. So tell me a bit more about that.
It was my first experience being like, wait, like young people, like we get to have like a voice in this sometimes. Like it was just so like worldview changing to what I thought politics was. Like I was sort of viewed as a very like party politics thing, not like, oh, like you can just be involved on a local level to have an impact. And that sort of got me involved with that. And that was my first, I think, like explicitly political involvement that I was a part of, and really was something that I really appreciated having that opportunity. And I also viewed it as like what do we view as important then? Like not necessarily what are people viewing on the outside, or like what's the expectation of us? So talking to the two projects that you mentioned, one, the plastic ban initiative, and then also the having the benches downtown Northampton painted, these both came from places of us being like, what's like actual change that we can have? Like we don't want to just like pass the resolution that says like, yes, we support this. We don't want to just, get on the ban, but say like, yes, we support this issue. We want to actually do something.
Good. And it's just like basically anything that you can do to like ensure that the work that you're doing is actually going to help or like affect someone else. So going off that, what would you say is your biggest source of internal motivation for like all the work that you do today?
Biggest source of motivation. All right, trying to hit me with a hard-hitting question. All right. I think a big part of the motivation is just like, I think two parts. So I think one part of my motivation is like, I'm in this position where I can do those things. I need to do them. And I think the other part of the motivation is I just like love doing these things. Like just the enjoyment of being involved with projects, being able to work with other people is something that I love. And that in of itself is a form of motivation for me, where it's like, this is a really cool thing. But I'm not connecting that same way where it's like, even when it comes to immigration, it's not as though like my experiences with immigration were really negative and now I want to rectify that for other people. It's not necessarily that. It's like, oh, I have this connection to immigration. Like I feel passionately about it. I have friends who are in that situation, but a big part of it's just like, I'm drawn to this and I feel like it's something that just has to happen. Even I was just joking last night with someone where I was like, I'm not here to be eloquent. I'm not going to say things really beautifully. Like just whenever I'm talking about anything, like I'm a blunt force. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to make it happen. Like that's sort of my approach. But that's not always a good thing too. I think that's why you need to surround yourself with people who can be a little bit more critical when you are sort of just like, steamrolling through and you're like, okay, we just got to keep doing this. I think it's good to have. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
Just like thinking more like about your family, and like you mentioned that the connections like immigration and everything, and your mom as well. in like the current political atmosphere and like the Trump administration that we have today, like how big of a role do you think like race and like class plays when it comes to like matters concerning immigration?
I mean, enormously so. I mean, something that was actually really interesting is I think it even plays a role in the students that are involved with TRII and how they think about TRII. There's a conversation I was just having with someone who's been coming in the office, who's talking about how we phrase the work that we're doing. And she was mentioning how, you know, when we phrase it in a way of like, we're saving people's lives and like we're the difference in doing that, that it takes away a sense of autonomy from other people and sort of places in that it's all up to people who are privileged college students who have the opportunity to be in that, and it takes away the autonomy that people have in their struggle of getting to the U.S. in the first place, the role that they have in applying part of
like
asylum.
Overpowered by like a savior complex.
Exactly. And you know, I think that, you know, I think that's sort of more important to almost talk about, because I think that that is really an example of how acutely those institutional barriers they don't just affect the policies that are in place. Like, that's easy enough to show how quotas have shifted, how they've shifted with, depending on how people are viewed racially within the U.S., how class is used there, the countries that are targeted. Like, I think that's one of it. When you really think about how do people have those one-on-one conversations, how do people talk about the people that they're helping, I think that really points to those things that students don't necessarily talk about. And I think, I know I'm more than happy to say, like, I think this is a failing on our part. I think we need to be training students to more critically think about that aspect of the work that they're doing, to think about their role within immigration. Because I think that, you know, we can't just be doing immigration work. We need to also be challenging the ways that we are perpetuating those structures that also are harming immigrants within the U.S. as well. Like, otherwise, you know, we're only doing half the job, and I don't think that's right if our goal is to really be helping people.
Yeah, definitely. And just like thinking about like young people and like their role in like activism and like politics, the people who like make policies or who we think should make policies won't be around to see them implemented, or won't be around to like have the effects of it like on their lives. So it is our future. So like, what do you think about like the role that young people like play in like politics and like activism today, and like how do you think it should change or even evolve?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts. So I think one part is just generally when we're talking about young people being involved in politics, I think we also need to realize all the different barriers that young people run into. So like, why aren't they involved in politics? Like, sure, apathy may be part of it in certain instances, but can we also talk about all the things where it's like, when we're told young people we're not supposed to be involved in politics? Can we talk about how we're all the jobs that we have to be handled? Can we talk about the stresses of that? Can we talk about the way that we live in a far more polarized political world than our parents that may make us feel more disinvested in wanting to be involved in politics? I think one thing we see with a lot of these movements, even happening here at Brandeis, when they're like, oh, why didn't these people show up to our gun rights rally? Why didn't they show up to this rally? It's like, because sometimes people can't, and particularly young people can't. And I think that we need to recognize that when we say, like, let's get more young people involved. So I think that's part of it, is like, yes, it's good for young people involved. We should get more young people involved, but we need to also be conscious of the messaging that we're using, and that we're not being like, you're a bad person if you didn't get involved, because you need to understand the context as to why isn't someone involved. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is like, we totally need more young people representation within politics. Like, it is our future. We are far underrepresented. I mean, you can just see the shifts with how, even within the Democratic Party, how they react when more young people get involved. You start hearing more of those just outwardly, you know, racist, classist, sexist comments coming from older Democrats, because they're finally like being explicit, like, this is why I don't want young people involved, because we're willing to more challenge a lot of times those sorts of structures. Not all the times. I can say that I know a lot of young people who are involved even in the Democratic Party who I think are continuing to perpetuate those systems, but I think that's something that you see there. But like, when young people get involved, I mean, one thing that someone talked to me about a few years ago, which I never thought about, which is just so true, right, is like, we're having just come from like doing research, like learning in school, like having those like learning skills, like once you've been out of school for 10 years, like you may not be as critical of a thinker. Maybe you're really good at your job. Like, I'm not saying you're not good at your job, but we have a particular skill set of critical thinking, of doing research. And like, I would totally want us involved in politics because we know how to think that way. We're involved with talking with people who are different from us. Whereas, look, if you're someone who's in finance or something, and everyone around you like looks and is from the same background and everything like that, the perspective that you're going to be bringing, and you're always thinking in like this monetary sense, like you just don't have that same way of approaching issues that young people do, and like that needs to happen. And the other thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is that you can't just be someone who is a senator or representative and say we need more young people and put together a commission or something like that. You need to step down from your position, and you need to actively work to get a young person to fill your position. I think the only way we're going to have meaningful change when it comes to, I mean, really any sort of diversity of age, of race, or anything, is people need to step down from their positions that they're in and work to have other people fill those slots that do make those changes actually happen. And I think, when people ask me, they're like, how, like, from being in this position, I was the youngest person elected to the state committee. I feel like I kept having old people come up to me. They're like, oh, our state, our committee, or, everyone's so old, like, how do you make a change? And like, at first I was like kind of nice about it, but at this point I'm just like you should probably, step down and find someone to take your position. Like, that's how you're gonna make change.
Yeah, so just like, what do you think is the next step for Jonathan Goldman?
Politics has taken somewhat more of a back burner for me since getting more invested with TRII, because I want to make sure that we can really be sustainable there. And also, since the campaign season just sort of ended, we have a little bit of relaxing right now too. So that's a big part of it. I'm not really interested in grad school or law school or anything like that. I'm, like I said before, I'm like blunt force. I love my classes to the extent that they connect to something I'm doing in real life and thinking about how I can critically apply those topics in real life. But like thinking about doing research for like 3 years at grad school, just just closes me off. I'm like, nah, I need to interact with people. Like, I need to do those sorts of things. So right now it's like, let's make TRII sustainable. I think once I'm done with school too, I think that will open up some more time where I can expand back to where I was involved in politics, and then I want to think more critically about how we get more people invest in that way, and think about how even within institutions like the Young Democrats of Massachusetts and these organizations that are even young people, how can we look critically within those as well, and not just criticize older people. We need to criticize ourselves as well, and look at ourselves as well and say, how can we also make those changes as well.